also at that high competitive level because they know they want to take that next level. So there is that balance between like, you know, those players that are exceptional, the ones that have a gift for the game, or ones that are like really, really, really like dedicated to improving their game.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Reflective Coach podcast with Coach Luca. In this episode I feature with Coach Maya Pitts. She currently coaches out in America, which was a really good interest and contrast between both what the UK and the USA had offered, and talking about those experiences about being over in the US and how football differs over there. But Maya was actually over here in the UK as she works for Liverpool Foundation, and she works across in the US for Liverpool. So she was on a foundation day and connected with the experiences over here in the UK for Liverpool. So she found some time out to drop in and feature on this podcast, which I'm really grateful for. Maya talked about working with her squads, her players, connectivity, relationships, and how things can alter if another coach was taking a session, and how these long-term relationships are very important. It was great to speak to Maya, and she had so many great insights, and I hope this episode you take as much away from it as much as I have. Again, I really enjoyed interviewing Maya, as I do with all my interviewees and participants, but I hope Maya's doing well back in the US now and does really well for the US Liverpool Foundation while she's over there. It was great to speak to her. Enjoy this episode. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify as well as Podcast Addict and Anchor, but you can reach out to the podcast and myself on Twitter and LinkedIn. Just give us a search on LinkedIn and Twitter, drop us a follow, drop us a like and subscribe. It's always great to feature new coaches, talk about experiences and especially international experiences, as I have done with Maya in this episode. Sit down, give it a listen, and there's plenty more episodes that keep coming your way. But the feature in this one is Maya Pitts. So, how are you? I know that you're very, very busy all the time, so it's taken a few months to get this organised, but it's great that you're on here, which I really appreciate.
Yes, no problem.
So, you're currently based out in the States, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm based out of New Jersey.
Which is obviously, fascinating just within itself. And, just being out in America, I'm trying to arrange a call with my mate later. He lives in California. And he's like, can we try and get it for sometime when I'm not up early? But he's been trying to get on for weeks. So hoping to get that arranged.
Yeah, because that's an 8-hour difference. So
yeah, massively. He's like, just make sure it's not like 4 o'clock in the morning. So I was like, it's 7 o'clock this evening, okay, so it should be okay. But the hardest bit is now trying to get my mate who lives in the UK actually on the call.
Yeah.
So,
it's like a lot of being flexible.
But you're back in the UK?
Yeah, I'm in the UK right now. I'm working for I work for the Liverpool Foundation. So I'm based out of New York, New Jersey for that job, but they just brought us over because we just started in like March, so they wanted us to see the programming here, get to meet the team in person. So because we've done Teams calls for the past like 6-7 months, so it's been nice to like be over here, like see the facilities, see how the programs work here, how like our coworkers run their sessions and all of that. So it's been really cool.
And it's great to network with other coaches and see how things change in different frameworks and different settings, especially between obviously US and UK, which can obviously have its cultural differences as well. But that's a great experience to a lot of people network and go and share with other offices in a hour radius as such, but to come all the way from another country to here in the UK and to be networking and to link up with co-workers is a pretty amazing experience that not many people have.
No, yeah, it's been like I don't know, football's just gotten me so many places. Like with this job, it's not like the traditional like coaching football. Like we do a lot of multi-sports and we use sports to engage the kids and like develop them on the side that we want to. So like for this program, we do like employability, so helping kids understand like different skills that you need for employment, and like understanding that like your sport isn't always going to be with you, whether it's you just don't make it. Like a lot of people want to make it to the professional level and just don't. There's the freak accidents where you're done playing for the rest of your life and you just can't. So like just having them be prepared for those next steps after high school. And then if they're not even into sports, like trying to encourage them to get into sports, get into physical activity, and like understand like that there's this whole world out here that has like so much to offer. And if you want to be in sports, it's not only like playing, there's so many different outlets within it.
And it's great to bridge that, especially for younger players and within their program of all ages, because, you see so many players commit exactly to football, for example, and they push, push, push for scholarship, and then they don't get a scholarship or scholarship ends and there's no professional outcome for them. And they don't know much other than football or what to do in that point, and then suddenly they're scrambling around whether to go and be a coach or whether to continue in sports or whether to go in a different route or direction. But having that multi-sport access and engaging with other sports and developing those skills, they might realise, you know what, I'm actually a really good basketball player. I might end up
Yeah.
having a career, whether semi-pro or pro, in it because I played basketball and I got all the skills I can transfer from being a footballer into basketball. But so many footballers give it all to one sport and limit themselves when they could be doing so much more.
Yeah. I definitely have noticed that with some of like my girls where it's like a lot of them right now, like they're pure footballers, but like you can look at like younger kids so much. And like especially when kids are like trying to decide what sport they want to play. Like I played basketball growing up, I played softball, I ran track and field, I did gymnastics. I'm like almost I'm 5'7", almost 5'8". Like I'm not a gymnast at heart. Like, as much as I love tumbling, that's not necessarily the sport for me. Basketball I was pretty good at. Softball, I just didn't love it, but it also like my hand-eye coordination is not really there. Like that's why I also cannot play goalie. Um, but like you see, like there's certain players, like even like positional, like those like aggressive players, like you just see like I had like a girl 9 years old, never set foot on a soccer field before. Go and say, okay, I'll play goalie. Ball's coming in. No one taught her a thing, nothing. The ball's coming in, like rolling in. She's running out, going to pick it up. And it's like you don't see that so much in youth soccer because a lot of times like you have like those little small puck goals and you just have kids literally just standing in front of the goal trying to block it and like save it with their foot. But you have this little 9-year-old that's never watched soccer, never has done anything. All we said was, "This is the box that you have. You can pick up the ball with your hands. Don't let the ball go into the net." And she runs out like fearless. So it's like she's naturally that position. You have kids that are just like naturally like super fast and like but not coordinated. So it's like maybe like a sport with a ball might not be for you, but you have track and field, you have cross country. Um, Kids that are just like really good with their hands as opposed to their feet. So it's like just like seeing all those nuances that like really do develop them and it's understanding like even though like I love this sport, but this sport I'm really like I'm much better at. Like if you really want that scholarship, like maybe you kind of go with the one that you're more naturally and like that you are better at.
And it's great, when you have, as you say about that young girl, you say you got this box, be fearless. So much, as much as we try to enhance and empower, players to have all these attributes and skills, sometimes we try and take the fear out of kids because we want to create environments that are totally comfortable. And I get that. And it was, I was talking to a coach once, and they were saying how we should make environments very comfortable, but then there should also be a case where it's challenging as well. But then we need to make sure there's that fine balance where we're not over challenging players. But it's that importance of having those, attributes which come naturally, such as that, that fearless, where you can come out, you're racing out to collect that ball. Because here in Wales, for example, we play with the pug goals, as you say. We play four aside until under eights, and then a goalkeeper's introduced then. But the last player as such, or last man, last female, would be a sweeper keeper as such. They can't use their hands, but they're a defender to try and encourage playing out from the back. But from my experience of coaching the seven for 3 years, all I saw coaches do was park one kid in front of that goal to stop the ball going in, rather than going, right, I want you to come and play up to at least halfway, or just track back, or try and play out that way. But instead of just actually standing there, because they were looking at more of how the team would play, rather than going, right, what's that individual's development there? So I'm just going to park this young 6-year-old player in front of this goal for the next 45 minutes to try and win this under sevens game.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are always interesting because it's like it's not about like winning at that age really. Like literally at 7, it's all about the development. If they win, they win. If they lose, they lose. Even if the parents are upset, like if you want to pull your kid, go ahead. Like that's not what 7-year olds are like here to do. Like of course it like builds confidence like to win and all that, but usually you're playing against like your friends. Like you're literally playing against the people out like the other people in your town. Sometimes you get to get out of the town and you play other towns, but like even if a coach like steps on and it's like, hold on, pause, like freeze. No one's gonna say anything. There's no refs. It's parents roughing, parents coaching, a coach in the middle of the field roughing, and still like directing, trying to pull kids, making sure kids aren't like using their hands. It's such a grassroots area at that age that like okay, like if you want to put someone in the goal, go ahead. So like they understand like there's a goal, like this is part of the game. There's somebody here. And like kind of just let them know, like, all right, so now you push up. Like that's their development. The small little development is like field awareness. If the ball and you like, kind of break it down like between like the thirds or even fourths, where it's like if the ball's at halfway and your teammates and the ball's on the other half, I want you at the edge of the I want you to stand here. So it teaches them like as the ball moves up, you move up. So like yeah, they're not really doing much still, but they're understanding you move up, the ball moves up, you move up. And then you switch them out after like 5 minutes. Like 5 or 7 minutes, depending on how long the games are, how many games there are. But it's kind of ridiculous how we some coaches are still so like focused when it's especially at the grassroots age where they're literally there to develop. You have kids that are literally have never like kicked a soccer ball before. I've never even watched the game, so it's like kind of just got to let them be kids at that age, really.
Absolutely, and it's difficult because you want to try and bridge grassroots and get more parents, more volunteers, and then you develop coach education, and then suddenly they're coming through the pathway. But because of this system, we lose so many kids through the game as such because parents or volunteers are set in their ways in terms of parking kids or trying to just get results or just limiting players instead of trying to expose players or looking at variations or trying to manipulate other sports within warm ups or within game development as such. And I remember arguing once with a chairman at a club that I was at. We were playing an opposing team, and all the opposing team was did for their goalkeeper was play the ball long, kick out your hands, and just clear the lines. Where I was just like, right, so you've taught nothing for an hour. You've just taught him to kick the ball long, to have no natural ability to receive the ball, play out from the back, be comfortable under pressure, to talk. Um, in contrast to what I've done with my goalkeeper, and my chairman actually argued against me and saying, do you know what? The opposition actually taught him quite a lot. I was like, what have you taught him? To smash the ball long and to just get rid. I was like, that's so, such an old style of football. And we had such a full blown argument about it. I was like, can't you see what we're trying to do here as a club and what you're saying? So that culture didn't fit in terms of what we were trying to develop in terms of the old expectations and culture that was already existing. So it was becoming that conflicting message and environment that what the modern coaches are trying to do compared to what's always been at that club and the way that football's been in the local area. So it's quite difficult to, see that on that young kid, for example. And it still stands out with me, even though that game was 4 years ago or whatever it was. But it still stands out with me how appalling I felt that was for that kid for that hour where he was just told to smash the ball, get rid, and clear his lines.
Yeah, it's kind of strange with that because like you want to teach them like to keep the ball and there's so many bits to the game, but you can't teach like a 10-year-old all that in one season. Not alone like 2 seasons. So it's like my whole thing is like can you teach them one style? My girls were passing the ball. Like I'll have a player kick the ball, like clear it. Granted, it'll be like a good clearance. I won't like it won't be a bad clearance. It'll be smart. But like, I'm like, hey, did you have time? And I'll ask them, did you have time to take a touch? Did you even think about taking a touch? And if they say yes, I'm like, okay. And if they're like, no, I'm like, all right, let's make sure we're thinking about it because that's got to be our first thought rather than the ball comes and we just kick it. So I want them thinking more of like, can we pass the ball? Can we keep the ball on the ground? Can we look to switch the ball, get to the middle, get to the other side, or like look to pass it as much as possible? And then I think like as they get older, like when they get to like that 12, 13, like even like 11, 12, probably like 12, 13, where it's like now we're like, okay, we know how to play the ball. We know how to pass it, move it. We know how to work under pressure. Okay, so now there's this other bit to the game, clearing the ball. And like you can kind of really talk to them more about it like that way rather than like if the ball comes here and like there's pressure, just kick it. No, learn how to play under pressure. Like that's how you develop a player. Like if you can play under pressure at 10 years old, imagine what you could do as you get older. Like you're just only going to develop. If you're thinking about like, could I have taken a touch? Did I think about if I could take a touch? So it's like just like there's so many small things. Like I don't know. The goal, yeah, I don't know. Kicking, I've never been part of like the kicking and running teams, so it's like really hard to see it happening with some teams, especially when they like it actually works for some teams. Because then it's
Absolutely.
like hard to like tell them like, oh well, no,
Yeah, of course, and it's all those questions which are posed around it. As much as that team might have had that style and felt the pressure and thought, "Oh, do you know what? That might work for us in terms of trying to hit the attack on the counter." There was none of this creativity. There was none of these questions in terms of developing this thinking. So, as much as this poor boy was, smashing the ball long, there was no going right. Next time, could you do this or why did you do that? Which
yeah,
never developed any of his learning in that sense. So, it was quite limited and. Um, it can be quite a difficult contrast to see when you see other kids being taught those styles. As much as they might take it into a seniors game, and there might be times when they literally do have to get rid if they're under pressure or minutes are left in the game and it's 4-3 to them, for example, and they need the win and they're holding out. Then yeah, I can understand the cross transfer. But until you're playing competitive at say under 14s here in Wales and you're starting under sevens, you've got a huge 7 year gap to make a million mistakes and to keep enhancing these mistakes until those competitive edges come into play.
yeah, definitely.
And that's what's difficult because here between Wales and England, as much as we have more of a nurture pathway in terms of no goalkeepers are under sevens, 4v4s, non-competitive now until under 14s, 9v9 football is all the way until under 14s. In England, they have a different outlook in terms of competitive football from under eights, and they play a Premier League style as such, and they accumulating points. So it can be a difficult one to sort of, as I've coached in the academy system of both, you can sort of see the relentless nature of wanting to win for kids in England compared to kids who are losing hunger, playing the same grassroots teams over and over and over again, and losing that hunger for winning compared to those who want to win in England. And when we've gone across and took Welsh teams to English teams, the English teams have that natural ability where they're there to win and they're pushing for that winning element, which can be, do we strip back the winning essence and outlook at a young age, or do we push more emphasis, or do we allow it to come naturally through? And it's so difficult to understand that context at times between what Wales and England are trying to do it in terms of their different outlooks, which is quite an interesting, I think, study to be had, but an interesting outlook from both governing bodies as such.
Yeah, I mean, in that aspect, I think like it's kind of up to like parents and like the kids of like what level do they want to be at, what kind of pressure do they want to be under. There are kids that are super talented at the age of 6, and like that grassroots program might not do will do nothing for them, and it'll be something that it's for fun. I've got plenty of girls that are playing both at an EDP, which is like one of the higher um, leagues here in the states, for like their club team. So they, like they're paying lots of money to be part of like this big club and play like at a high level. They'll do like college showcases. So they're at that level where they're competing. They're trying to take it to the next level, right? And they have the grassroots programs, which are still clubs. A lot of times you'll have it like a little town has a team in, where it's like it might be $200 for your grassroots program, where it might be like $3,000 for your club, like your high level club. So I do have quite a few girls that do both because they want to play with their friends, they want to play for their hometown, they want to represent, they want to just like kind of go back to like the fun aspect of the game and just enjoy it with their friends. And then you have like them also at that high competitive level because they know they want to take that next level. So there is that balance between like, you know, those players that are exceptional, the ones that have a gift for the game, or ones that are like really, really, really like dedicated to improving their game. They might go to that competitive level and they're going to be under more pressure. They're going to have more of these expectations and these standards, and they might get cut. They might have this, that, and the third. Whereas at grassroots, no one's getting really cut. We're always going to find another team for you. So I think it really just like depends on like, are you the parent that's going to push your child that doesn't even really know if they like the sport and they really might not even be that great at it into this developmental like high level, program where they're struggling to be a part of, you're paying thousands of dollars for them to be on like the lowest level team in that club, or you're going to put them in the developmental grassroots program where they're still going to get better. They're going to have fun. They're going to learn the game. They're going to learn all these aspects and learn to develop these skills and a love for the game to want to push themselves rather than like the parent pushing them into it. So that's a very interesting one where, you kind of have to look at it like, is it one way wrong and the other way right? Or is it just depending on like who the people are and like what the people want? And it's not, I don't even think it's like the people, it's like, what does the kid want?
Of
What
course,
does
and
the
it can be
kid
that
want to?
difficult, bridge to
Yeah.
try and understand what that kid wants, and even from a coach to understand what the parent versus kid wants, and then they
Yeah.
can sort of clash, and then you find yourself in the middle of trying to get what the kid wants compared to not trying to live through their parent as such in terms of pushing this kid who might not have that interest in playing, and that's what a really interesting scope not only for coaches but as well as parents to understand that the different personalities of kids that in terms of the personality of the go-getters, the ones who want to go and push for academy football, those who want to win, etc. Those who are there to have fun and be with their teammates, those who don't mind having a bit of winning, a bit of losing, and might take football up but might go into another sport. That's why there's so many different personalities that, as much as we create environments, which can be high performance, high driven as such, we need to create environments that cater for all these abilities, but also stimulate each individual personality. Because if you're doing a session consistently where it's not as engaging for the go-getters and those who want to push for the top, then naturally you're going to lose all of those players. Whereas you need to keep those players to maintain a balance of a team as such.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's what the importance, in terms of, coaches don't always understand every one of their players and they don't understand their personalities. And understanding that is, a really important concept. And you don't always see coaches trying to engage with their players as such or trying to understand them as much as they should.
Yeah, I like every single practice. It's bring everyone comes in and it's how was your day? Like what's like I got younger girls, so like it's always like I'm bad. I'm like, all right, so what's going on? Why are you bad? She's like, school sucks. Like I have my teacher gave me homework, so like it's not you don't always like get like those answers from them, but like I think it's so important to like have a relationship with your kids, and that's like kind of what keeps me wanting to coach them. And yeah, like it's I don't know, like my girls are like my babies, so I love them. Like I've had both teams for about 3 years now, but like just having that relationship with them and them having a relationship with you, so not just it being a one-sided thing where it's kind of like fake almost. My girls know so much about me. Like I have like a new obsession with ducks, and they're like, Maya, I brought you a new rubber duck, and they just bring me like rubber ducks. Or like I know that some of them they love fidgets and candy, so I sometimes will just bring them little like candies or whatever. Or there's someone that does taekwondo, someone that does swimming, someone that does skiing and like snowboarding. So it's just like knowing like little quirks that they have and like little like hobbies that they have, and just being able to have those conversations with them. It makes them feel so much better. It makes them want to come to soccer practice, makes them want to enjoy it. And I had a team where I had to like give them up, unfortunately, because I had 3 teams, and then I took this job and I had to drop one team. So we dropped like the team I had the least amount because they were brand new. I had only had them for 1 season as opposed to other girls I had for 2 years. And when the girls found out, they like their new coach said we couldn't run. I couldn't run a session. Like I was too busy because like 2 or 3 of the girls were just like crying, and like they were just so upset. Like I told their parents. I was really kind of upset that the parents didn't like relay the message to some of them, or they kind of just didn't really think about it. But like you just see like that impact you have on these girls. Especially like girls having a female coach. You don't see it too often, but like you see the impact that you have on your players, and like how much they appreciate having you around. And like I felt really bad for this, but like we all went to Rita's, like an ice cream shop, like after the last day of practice last season, and it was my old team and my current team that went. And my old team, like 2 of the girls forgot to say bye to their new coach, but they were like, "Bye, Maya, I'll miss you." Gave me a hug and like started walking away, and I was like, "Girls, you forgot about like your new coach," and they're like, "Oh, sorry." But like it's just like that impact that you have on them and like an impression that you leave that's so important. Like, someone might go away and just be like, I haven't played soccer since I was 13, but like I'll never forget those times because like I had the best coach. Like I loved my coach. I That was my first female coach. Or like, if someone like starts disliking soccer, it's gonna be like because of the coach most likely. Like that coach didn't allow them to continue loving it. They might not have really loved the game, but they loved being around the game because they had a coach that like interacted with them, gave them attention. You don't really know always what their home lives are like. So it's like they might not get that attention at home. They might not get that at school. So it's, being that outlet for them, whether they realize it or not, whether you realize it or not. I don't need to know if they have that at home, but like I know that their favorite food is this. So I think that's like probably like one of the most important, if not the most important part about coaching, especially with like the youth.
And there's, the key message there: impact, impression, relationships, understanding, the people that you have. And, and it's not just what you do on the pitch, because it's about understanding those players, what they get at home as well. They might be, the only child, or they might be one of many siblings as well, or they might get everything at home, or they might get the least at home. And suddenly in that environment where they might not know how to socialize with kids their own age, or, they're not, they bring the relationships where they see their players around them as their own family members as such, because they have such a tight knit relationship at home. They might become attached, and when you have that impact and impression as a coach, and you're only seen as a coach, the mentor, a big sister or big brother as such at times. Um, when it comes to saying, right, I gotta leave, and other things happen in our lives, it can be so difficult for those young people to go, oh no, you're not going to be here anymore, or how am I going to bridge that relationship? And they're always part of that mind process which we have, and we have those emotional connections with those players, which is brings in so many other factors when you're thinking of young people within themselves.
Yeah, I think that's like, I think still being young and like having opportunities and, wanting to travel and like, I've told my girls like part of the reason I'm still here is because of you guys. Like there's so many other things I could be doing, so many different opportunities I could have taken. And like, what keeps me staying coaching and actually enjoying it as well. Not that I don't enjoy it, but like what makes me love coaching so much is like the girls that I do have. If you don't have good players around you that like interact with you and like you don't interact with them, then like no, you're not gonna want to go coaching. You're not gonna want to do it. On those rainy days, like of course I don't want to be out here coaching. Like but like even like when just like showing the kids that like you care about their safety, and, their parents see it. Like we had like it was like a storm. It was like that, and it just came pouring down. And my girls are still trying to help me clean up. I'm like, girls, leave it. Just drop it. Please go to your cars. And I had a parent that helped me clean up and everything while I watched the girls get to their cars. And then like a parent were late, so they're like sitting in my car and like they're wet and dirty and I have a brand new car. I'm like, you guys know I love you. If you guys are in my car right now, no towels and you're wet. But like, you just see the parents like really like those small things. Like the parents appreciate that. The kids don't really see it, but like they also appreciate it because I'm like, no, girls, just leave it. Like I gotta go. Don't sit in this rain. Go get safe. Go get dry. So it's just like I don't know. Yeah.
And it's
I
what
think
you do
that's
naturally
such a
as a
big part.
coach, which can be so important, because, being out there in that rain and showing that you were there for them, even though it came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
what you do for them is what the players will end up doing for you as well. Whereas I had my team for 7 years, and, as much as, another coach might go, right, it's raining, we're off tonight, I'd still continue the session within reason. But the players would still be there rather than going, oh no, it's raining, whereas the other teams would, because they realise that you're out there, that you're putting a session on, and they're going to be there for you as well. So that those relationships are so important, and what you do for those players, which at times they might recognize, if not, the parents definitely recognize it and make sure that the child comes through, because you're committing that time to the team, and that child essentially.
No, yeah, definitely.
And it's hard getting into a new car, especially with wet clothes on. It is one of the worst things about coaching going.
I have not put the towel like I've like packed my bags in my trunk. It's like perfectly organized. I have like my personal soccer bag. I have like my coaching bag, got the ball bag, got the pucks. And I was checking the other day. I was like, wow, I haven't put in my raincoat or my puffy coat. Haven't even put towels in. Like it just like went over my head because like I don't know. I was like, I need, but it like sparks it. I was like, all right, towels. So like they are in my car now, and so it was my raincoat. Luckily,
Keeping little things in there which are part of the coaching tips, which are very important. But back to that personality, it's so important to understand players because I've currently taken over an under-19s team. I've been with them now for 5 months. I previously helped coach them in the past for a short period where I came in for about 3 months. And then I was spread thin in terms of the other teams I was coaching and everything else I had going on in my life, and I had to make the decision to cut them off. But now I'm coaching them at under-19s, and they're being challenged more than ever. They're now in a different environment where they're being dropped, they're not being picked, they're not getting maximum minutes. We're now playing competitive football, we're playing a different style of football. You can see some players reacting differently to decisions such as being cut from squads or not being brought on for the bigger picture as such, because if we continue losing, then it's going to impact the team rather than trying to get a win to bring up the morale, and trying to balance out with the happiness and trying looking at a big picture. But it's understanding these personalities, the way the players are going to react, how we communicate with them, how they receive the communications, how are they going to focus on what they need to work on in terms of focus points, and how they take on board this information or these decisions to be dropped, and how they understand things. But you can see where they've had a previous coach for their grassroots since they were 6 to 14s, 15s to when that coach left, in terms of how little they were impacted, and in terms of how little their creative thinking was challenged, in terms of their mindsets, resilience, and all these other attributes that they're really struggling with now under 19s, where you know when if I have my team now under 11s, under 19s, and we fast forward 8 years, I know how my players would react so much better than the current 19s I have now. So it's about understanding these personality of players, which is so important.
yeah, I think that's like one of the most important because it's also like how are you coaching them? If you can't coach little Susie the same way you coach little Bobby, they're gonna react differently. Like as much as like they've got to understand of everyone, like you should be able to take like if I'm going to be a strict coach, everyone should be able to take it, but you have to also realize like in order to pull the best out of certain people is knowing your people, knowing how people interact, knowing how people learn. Someone could be like only learn off of visual. Granted, as a coach you should be visually and verbally saying it and like demonstrating it using cones, using people, however you're doing it, it should be both verbally and demonstrative. But so you might have that player that is going to need an extra lesson. You might know that you have a player where like you can simplify it as much as you want, but they're still not going to get it. I have players that like I've gotten rid of like the counting games. We're like, all right, count up to this first one to like 20 wins, or count and whoever gets the most wins. I've got too many players that it just goes over their head and they forget to count. So I just like don't do that anymore. Like I know my players enough that like those type of things aren't going to work for them. Knowing like what works and what doesn't off of like the overall personalities of everyone. Understanding that like someone might need a little bit more motivation to do stuff. I've got a player that needs that like, hey, come on, like you need to get going here. And then I also know like sometimes when it's I'm getting too soft on her, I know that I also can get tougher on her. But it's like understanding like where they are, and if their style that they that usually works for them isn't working, you have that relationship to be like, hey, you're not where you should be, and I know you should be there. You need to get here, but you're here. And it's just creating those like those relationships with each other. I can like the last, was it last season? Was either last season or 2 seasons ago. I looked at my players, and like it's probably the first time they've heard me like be like completely flat out like you guys sucked. But it like And I literally had to have a whole lot like, I just stood there and I just, like, looked and I was just, like, trying to figure out what to say, and I was trying to, like, fluff it a bit and, like, they were, like, 10. Yeah, they were just our U10, and they just played horrible. Like, absolutely they know they did. And, I was just baffled of, like, how bad they played. And, like, I was literally like, sometimes it'll be like, "Listen, girls, like, I love the effort. Like, you guys went out, you guys gave a lot of effort. Things just didn't go our way." But it wasn't even like things not going our way. It was like there was no effort. There was no teamwork. There was nothing. There was nothing really good to say. Usually there's always like one thing you can pull and you can drive off of that one thing, maybe two things. But there was just absolutely nothing. And I think a couple parents were actually around me, and I looked at them, my players, and I just said, "Girls, I'm trying to think of like what to say, and I love you all, but like that was horrible. Like this was just not our day. This was not our game. Unfortunately, I was, and that's when like the positive came in. It was like it happens though. We're not always going to be the best players. Like, we're not always going to have a great game. And sometimes it's going to be hard to hear. But I know every single one of you know that this game was bad. But they understand, like, if someone else were to come in, some random person was like, "You guys played horrible. What was that?" It's like, you can't really say that. Like, if you don't have a relationship with someone, you don't know their personalities. If I didn't know that they would take it okay, or if, like, if I came in there just like hammering it into them, they're not going to want that. And I've seen it actually happen where they don't like a coach that sometimes comes in and covers, and they're like, "Oh, we don't like that person. They're mean." Like, that's just not like they don't learn that. They don't interact. They don't learn that way. Maybe I baby them, but I also know that like I'm hard on them. I expect them. They know what level I want from them. And I can literally just look at them and just be like, "What was that?" And they're like, I don't know. I'm sorry." I don't have to say anything anymore to them. It's just literally a look, but they also know. So it's just like, "Hey, get us to our standard. I know this is where you are. You're playing here." And it's done. I don't have to say a lot at games. I don't have to say a lot at practice. It's who learns this way, who learns that way. Understanding that as a group, they all can take it this, and I can do that. So it's just like you can't really coach someone without knowing those personalities. You can't like they can't expect them. You can't expect someone to get better if you're not teaching them to what's best for them. If you're teaching everyone in one whole group to what you want to learn or how you want to teach, and not adapting to how that group learns, or maybe if most people in a group learn one way and a couple others learn a different way, understanding like those players learn a different way. Let me go talk to them. Because I know one girl's like very sensitive. So like that stuff, like sometimes if I'm like a little bit rough and like harsh, I know I have to go talk to her. I'm like, "Hey, listen, you're doing fine, but we need to get you up. You need to give it. I need you at 110 and not at 90." And it's just like being straight up with them. And if you have that conversation face to face now, and just like, "What do you need from me?" or what is struggling? Where are you struggling right now? What's going on in your head? And then it's just like you kind of just like understand them. Maybe someone's had a bad day. Maybe something's going on at home. Like I've had players had so many family issues, and you could see it in their play. I pull them off. It's not because you're playing bad. It's because your head. You need to bring yourself back down. We will have a little chat, breathe, and then go back on. Because I know that you can play, but like if one thing goes bad on the field and then another thing goes bad, everything is gonna go bad because your head's also gonna start telling you like everything in my life sucks right now. So it's just like that psychological side of the coaching as well has to really come in for a lot of times, especially with the youth.
And there's so many, key messages just in what you were saying there. Or, if we were to snip out, an area of just of this interview, then that one would be, a peer standout. And sometimes, as much as we talk about environments in terms of the culture, just communication and, the just the communication and understanding these players can just make an environment before even setting anything out in terms of how you want things to look, or in terms of different locations, or in terms of other expectations, just by communicating with players, make that environment no matter where you are and who's there, because you've got that understanding, you've got that belief where they can talk to you, you can talk to them, and you can address things in principle, about performance, about effort. Whereas other coaches, if they didn't have that relationship, then automatically that communication can destroy an environment, destroy those relationships, destroy the aspirations of those players, because you might say one thing, and one player might go all the way up, and then one player might come all the way down in terms of just that communication, because you don't have that relationship. Whereas, you might have that if you have a relationship, but the one who's gone down will understand the way that you've come across in terms of how you've said that.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And it's so important. Many players don't have that relationship with coaches. Coaches walk on the pitch, I'm the coach, I'm the manager, I make the decision, and this is what's happening. Whereas, I was speaking to a very close friend of mine, who is on a PhD, and then we were saying how coaching is going to change, where you can have different coaches now within a coaching environment. As much as we got sports and exercise science coaches on the pitch, and we got fitness coaches, you might have psychologists away from the pitch. There's going to be different coaches on the pitch. Obviously, where we have set piece coaches now, on the pitch, there are now going to be psychology coaches to address these areas, to talk to these players. And I think that's a really interesting concept in terms of how you frame that environment. To as much, you might have one coach looking at tactical, one coach looking at technical. If you've got one always looking at the psychological amongst that, I think that's really important. Really important for the players to have available whilst on the grass, because it can be such a difficult place for them mentally, because they're receiving so much information. They're thinking about what they're going to do next. They're thinking about their relationships, thinking about performance from last week, performance on this week. I mean, there's so much going on where we're going, well, it's just an hour, but they've had probably 20,000 thoughts in that hour, and it can be such a difficult period for them just within that hour. But you look at a full-time player as such, you maximize that, and their head is swiveling.
Yeah, we had that, and we had a sports psychologist in college, and it was probably one of like at first it was kind of different because it was before sports psychology was actually like making its way into teams. I think now you see it happen a lot more. I think mental health is also spoken about a lot more now. Techniques to like calm yourself, to like get over little, not, I don't say little, but like get over things that happen during games, and like understanding and learning techniques to do so. So like, just like visualization. I learned that in college, and that's been something that I do so much. Maybe not for every single game because I'm playing at the semi-pro level, but like, those bigger games, I'm definitely like sitting there like, all right, like what do I want to do tomorrow? How do I visualize this game happening? Let me visualize certain situations happening. Am I taking a free kick? Am I taking a corner kick? Am I beating a defender to get a shot on goal? And just like those small things that just like relaxes you. So like, yeah, that's not like necessarily something of I've got so much going on in my life, but it's just like in this moment, the only thing I'm focusing on is what I want to focus on. And I'm able to take that into so many other things and aspects of my life. So it's something that I learned through football, but now it's all right, I have a big presentation coming up. Let me visualize the night before. Let me visualize 20 minutes before it happens. I have, I don't know, whatever, an event. Like I have to go coach. Um, so many small things like that where you learn something and you take it on with you, and those techniques that we learn to like cope with our frustration or our anxiety, no matter what it is, whether it's the anxiety for an upcoming game, or anxiety because I have like 20 other things happening and I still have to play this game tomorrow, like my head's not in it. Focusing on one thing and just like taking the time, like it's almost as if it's meditation too, but just like focusing on that thing that you want to do and visualizing every little step of the way. So I've like really I do try to get that going in my life. Haven't really done it with my girls yet, but I think I want to start doing it. Probably not yet, but definitely something to like get them learning or understanding is important.
And it's that visualization which is a really important concept. And it might be difficult with younger players as such until they develop that framework and that mindset from that culture and environment which is created. But especially for older players, just visualizing how things are going to look for them in terms of again, understanding that bigger picture as well, they can visualize what is going to happen both short and long term, is really
Mhm.
important in terms of how they approach on and off the field events, as well as how they approach their game, how their outlook is maintained, what they want to push for, and how that coincides with their personalities as such, in terms of those go-getters, in terms of those who are happy just to play, etc. And it's really important to have that concept of understanding of mindset and what mindset they have, and how this can be developed within coaching.
Yeah,
Abs-
definitely just like growing all those. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's so many interesting concepts just within the coaching world, and so many that we've covered and that we've spoke about, and that we've highlighted relationships, highlighted understanding players, the culture, environments, visualization, mindset, outlook, communication, how we engage with them, how players react, respond, how we challenge them, being things that they're going to do for us because of the standards that we naturally set, connectivity with players, understanding them, their needs as such, and how we build those relationships. But there's so many great outcomes and great things to listen to there in terms of that. But you're extremely busy and you're on the go all the time, especially between the US and the UK. And I know you're out watching the Liverpool game later today, where hopefully Liverpool lose, but I hope you enjoy the experience.
Oh, who are you a fan of?
Chelsea,
Okay. Okay. I don't. I'm not gonna be mad at that.
which is great. A lot of people, as soon as you say that, they respond in such a negative manner.
I'm such like a so like I've been supporting Liverpool for a couple of years. But like I'm not like a massive like team like it sounds so weird. Like I'm not like anti any other team besides like the Dallas not the besides the New York Giants, and that's cuz like like my family is a massive Dallas Cowboys fan, and it's just the greatest rivalry at home. So it's not even like I really hate the Giants. I just love how much of like a rival and how much crap gets talked between the teams. But like I think that like teams like players just move around so much. Like the team one year isn't going to be the same team in 2 years. Granted, like you're about like the badge and like all of that, but like yeah, I don't know. Like the teams that like I grew up with, like my family, but like we had like a basketball team, but we never had like a football team. So it's kind of for me, it's always just been like watching the game is what I love to do. Of course, I'm going to support Liverpool. I'm going to root for Liverpool. It comes down to Chelsea, Liverpool. I'm going to go for Liverpool. But like, I'm just so like people that are anti, like, screw your team, burn. I'm like, your favorite player is going to go to them one day, maybe. Like, what are you going to do then? So I don't know. Like, I'm a big, so like for like for basketball, my favorite player is Chris Paul. So I usually bounce to like I support the team. Like I was a New Jersey Nets fan, but the Nets moved to Brooklyn, so I kind of was just like, I'm just gonna watch basketball. Um, and I just started following and supporting teams that Chris Paul was on, or just like watching it. But like I was a fan of some like two teams that Chris Paul has been on because I just love the squad. Like he plays for the Suns right now, and I think the team is like absolutely amazing. Will I be a fan of them 2 years from now? Possibly not, but I don't know. I just like watching sports and just like everyone's gonna, yeah. I don't know.
And it's that interesting concepts, and enjoying sports for what they are. And as much in America, sports is massive. And I suppose when you go to the NFL, and they can be massive games in themselves. So coming to Liverpool the game today, you might go, "Do you know what, it's actually not as big as the NFL here today," but it's still an amazing game to go to. And being at the Cop, is an amazing experience at Liverpool ground in terms of when all the fans are there and everything that Liverpool stands for is built upon. But it's so fascinating in terms of American sports and British sports, but um, American, like I can't wait to go to America. My mate in Cali's actually trying to get me to go on holiday there. I was like, right, mate,
Yeah.
we're watching basketball. I just want to go to an NFL game. Want to go to an NHL. There's so much that America is so amazing and offers. When you go to like a high school, you playing for the basketball team and you've got an American football team out the back and they're so cool. When you sort of come to the UK, we don't really have any of that, and it's just I think the setup in America is amazing in terms of that sport for high school.
Yeah, the high school, like, it's amazing, and like even like the collegiate level. Only thing I don't like is that we don't have like a promotional relegation system for our pro sports. That's like the big thing that like I've like I didn't really think about it until I actually got to that pro level where it's like everywhere else has the promotions and relegation. Why don't we have it? Like we have the talent, we have like granted like maybe not the money, but enough people nowadays will definitely like put money into this. NFL, like NBA, like they have the money to do it. So it's just like kind of like interesting to see if America like starts to develop that or not, but it should be fun to see.
Absolutely, but when you're in that driving force as such, it can be difficult to go why change something that's always worked for us, and it can
Yeah.
be really difficult because once you sort of change, can you go back to what you once had? And sometimes you
Yeah.
can't, and I suppose whoever is going to make that decision is going to be in the hardest place to sort of comprehend that because you could be the person who either makes it go forward or you're the person who makes it crash, and I suppose it hasn't changed because there's just one person who's not ready to do that yet.
Yeah, I don't see it ever happening. I know that there's like talk of another like women's professional league coming out. So I could maybe like they'll try to do the promotion relegation league. Which will be nice if there is something that like brings that over cuz it like there's so many girls that play. So much talent that like kind of like I don't like the way it goes to waste, but so many girls don't see that they have an opportunity to play because of how like I've been to a couple of tryouts in the states and getting to that all the way and then it's just like yeah no it's so hard to make a team and like I'm fortunate like for not fortunate but growing up I never really saw like the stable league because the I'm not sure if you're familiar with women's soccer in the states but like our professional league has folded about like 3 times in 10 years between like 2006 and like 2012. This is the longest standing that it's been. And I'm like obsessed and I love it. But growing up, my goal was to go overseas because I didn't see the stability here. And I don't know if that would be different if there was a promotional relegation league. I don't know. But like we also are at like a different time where like so many girls are playing and so much talent is either going overseas or everyone just goes into work because they don't see it as an opportunity. So, I've had so many friends that have been like exceptional players, like exceptional. And they're just like, yeah, no, I'm just like, that's not my next step because there's no reason. There's nothing there for me. So it'll be interesting with this new league coming out. But I think every year women's game gets bigger. And it's good. I'm like really happy with how it's going. And even with youth soccer.
And let's hope that it continues to grow because, as I said, there's an amazing high school program, and a lot of the interviewees have been female soccer players from America, and they've all gone abroad and followed their own journey. So it's been interesting to understand why they've done that. But then my heart goes out to them because, as you say, there's so much wasted talent because, they don't want to go down that route or they have to up their lives or they have to make big changes. And sometimes, and here in England, you sort of come through, you do your scholarship if you make it pro, then it's about how you get through the levels, and if you make it all the way to the Premier League, then national team looks at you, and it's an amazing concept. But in terms of America, so many female players are having to leave and they got amazing accolades of their experience in terms of scholarships, their outcomes, their degrees, their achievements. And when I'm reading about them, I'm like, whoa, they've got all these achievements. That's incredible. And then they go abroad and they're like, well, we've had to go abroad sort of, sideways as such, to get out of our country to try and be recognised to play for, the youth teams and the nationals. And,
Yeah.
and it's difficult because it's like a system is set up to progress players, but it fails them at the same time, and it's so difficult to see so much talent wasted, and it really breaks my heart as such because as we know the inequalities in female football is quite big at the moment. But when they're having to give up so much more than I feel like male at times, it can
Mhm.
be so difficult in terms of how you pursue your dream, or you give up so many aspects of your life, and it's such a difficult one for any person, but especially females at the moment, especially in America, I believe.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, this has been a pleasure, Luke.
A-
Thank you so much for this.
Absolutely no problems. I'm really glad that I could get you on and we finally got this organised. But as said,
Yes.
I hope you enjoy the game this afternoon, and I hope that Liverpool's treating you well, and everything that you're doing. But I hope you go back to the US. Everything continues to go great over there, and get to see all your great social media posts and what you're doing. But I'm really glad that you come on, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
No worries, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.